Yeah, several years ago now, I watched the Final Fantasy 14 noclip documentary, and that was really good. And I saw, since I started playing Warframe, there's a Warframe documentary. Ooh. So I thought we'd come have a look at that. So let's turn the music off. The music is off. Let's watch this. Like I say, these are great documentaries. Final Fantasy 14 one. It was really good. I recommend you watching that if you haven't watched that one. It's like 4 of them.
I still remember the first time I played Warframe. I just treated myself to a launch day PlayStation 4, and during a break playing FIFA or Killzone Shadowfall or something, I wandered onto the PlayStation Store just to see what else was available. And it was then that I came across this curious looking free-to-play game.
I wasn't quite sure what to make of Warframe, to be honest. I had no idea it was made by the studio responsible for one of my favorite games ever, Unreal Tournament.
I didn't know that until
idea
recently
that
either.
It was a game that Digital Extremes had been trying to release in some form or another for over a decade. And I certainly didn't realize that this curious little free-to-play game was the studio's last chance at survival.
Warframe's been out for 5 years now on Xbox One, PlayStation 4.
A bit longer now. This is a 7-year-old documentary.
Most of its time on the PC in Steam's top 10 most concurrent players chart. But it's also a game that a lot of people know absolutely nothing about. So we thought, what better candidate for a no-clip retrospective than the remarkable story of Digital Extremes and Warframe. This story starts 3 decades ago in the Great White North.
Like 4 decades ago, but yes, yeah.
Through grade 9, all the way through to the end of university, I always had in my head that I would do games just in my spare time as a hobby. It was always a hobby in my head. I wasn't getting into a real job in games, so I kind of put that out of my head. But yeah, I'd made games all throughout university. I went to university for mechanical engineering and expected to go into mechanical engineering. And one of the little games I was making through university, I got published in this little kind of magazine disc thing called Big Blue Disc. That would be on, you'd see it on the magazine shelves. It would come out monthly, and I was just looking around for something to do with my game that I finished, which is kind of a cool little game, and I sent it to them, and they paid me my $1,200 for the rights to do that. And so I was amazed that I actually made a little bit of money from this tiny little game. And so that's kind of the first
in the 80s.
stepping stone to get it to the professional and actually money coming in.
What was the game?
It was called Legends of Murder.
Oh.
You can search it online and probably find it. I think I found it somewhere.
Fantastic title.
And it actually works. I was just playing it a couple months ago.
Right.
You download it somewhere, and it's funny little game. I still thought at that point it would be a hobby in that, and I thought it'd be fantastic if I could make a little bit of extra income from that. And so as I was finishing university, I was a big fan of Star Trek at the time, and it was and then a game called Star Control had come out. I just loved this idea in my mind of combining those two things, and I ended up making this game called Solar Winds, which was just finishing up as I was graduating university.
That's a very nice
Right around that time, I knew this
title.
game was a little bit bigger, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more viable as a real product. And so I remember playing Hugo's House of Horrors, which was a shareware game at the time. I actually physically wrote an actual letter to David Gray. I do believe his name is. I can't believe I remember that. And I sent the letter off to him. I asked, can people make money from shareware because you're giving it away for free? And he wrote back and he told me about CompuServe. It was a good online area where people discuss games and shareware and stuff like that. And he said, yeah, some people make a few bucks and some people make $1 million. And of course that, my mind exploded. And I think from there, that's where I got onto CompuServe, and I found out about Apogee and Epic Games. I met Mark Rain, and the first game ended up being published by Epic Mega Games at the time. I think I was making about $1,200 a month from Solar Winds. And I was like working on my next game. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go from $1,200 a month to $2,400 a month. So I can actually live reasonable on that. And so it was exciting times, and I just loved the work. And the game that came after that was Epic Pinball, and so as I was making, I was like, okay, this is good. This game is my best yet. It's going really well, and so I was really quite excited about it, thinking, yeah, maybe I'll make more than $2,400 a month. Maybe I'll make $3,000. It's like in my mind, oh my God, $4,000 a month? That would be living in luxury. And of course, it comes out, and it was a monster. Like for individual, for one person making, it was a monster hit. And I just remember my first check was like $50,000.
Wow.
So it was a whole new world, and that was kind of the start of the upward climb.
That would blow your mind. You're expecting $3,000 and you get 50.
By the time James had finished his marathon of work on Epic Pinball, he was pretty tired of making pinball games. But Epic Mega Games, the game's publisher, knew that a sequel would be wonderful business. James pushed back, saying he didn't have the creative energy to work on another pinball game. So Epic suggested that he hire some people to do the work for him. This was the foundation of Digital Extremes. And the first game for the team, Extreme Pinball, was another hit. While James's new team was working on pinball, he was taking his first steps into 3D game design. And it's through this that a decade-long collaboration with Epic would begin.
Of course he'd be with Epic if Unreal Tournament was on it. That particular one with that particular map with those 3 buildings, I played so much of that.
Today we often associate this franchise with Epic Games, but the original games were born out of a tight collaboration between the two studios. Between the two, there were around 16 people working collaboratively on the project.
We're watching a documentary about Warframe, well, Digital Extremes at the minute, where they came from. Hello. How was your stream? Did you do good? Were you having a fun time? I hope so.
Project. During the development of Unreal, the Epic team travelled to London, Ontario to work on the game, while the team at Digital Extremes travelled to Raleigh, North Carolina, where Epic is still based, to work on UT99.
What were you playing?
As intense as Unreal was, and hard, and really just trying to ship a game, Unreal Tournament was, I think, felt more creative and more.
So speaking about Unreal Engine, I guess, but not
that allowed
Warframe.
us to make even a better
this
game.
This is
At
about
point,
digital Extremes.
Contribution went down, and I think I focused more on the art and weapon. I can proudly say I think all the weapon designs are mine for the most part.
What are some of your favorite weapons?
That particular one is crazy. Halo 1,
I was very
legendary.
happy with how that one turned out.
Did you put the smiley face at the end of the alt fire?
I did. I did. Do you know that? I'm not sure if this story's ever been told. We were all in North Carolina, and we were coming back from lunch somewhere.
So much nostalgia for those maps.
A church called the Redeemer. It's like, hey, that's a great name for the big guy. So,
pilotable nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Named after a church.
Yes.
Great.
I know Cliff had a lot of input in the weapons as well, but we wanted something that was more than just basic shooting. Combining the alt fires to add an extra layer of skill on top. So we were always looking for a way to
firing the ball and then shooting it. That was awesome.
You shoot the weapon in its basic form and you can do well, but if you have that extra skill and you can do the combos or whatever, that there's an extra layer of skill that's kind of built on top of the weapons. So that was definitely the intention, as much as we possibly could.
I'm sure they don't mind, no.
From that original 99 one?
Facing Worlds, Cedric's map was definitely one of our favorites that we played in the office. There's a lot of really good ones. I like Deck 16 was awesome. It was Misha's map that was
Music's something else. It's very
on
90s.
Championship, pretty much everything. I worked on weapons and progression. I'm a programmer. Was how I got my job here. So I program weapons, I program game modes, I program bots, bombing run, like all those kind of things. I remember one time when we moved offices, we had to have an electrician come in, and he had to come in late. I was the only one in the office, so I let him in. And he said, so you make video games here? And I said, yeah. He's like, whoa, any video games I might have heard of? And I'm like, yeah, Unreal Tournament 2003. He said, oh yeah, I really wanted to like that Unreal Tournament 2003, but you replace a sniper rifle with that god-awful lightning
The lightning thing, yeah.
And I'm like, yep, that was me.
After UT99, the teams continued to collaborate, working on Unreal Championship for consoles and Unreal Tournament 2003. But by the time UT 2004 came around, collaborating remotely became much more difficult, as both studios had grown so much. It was during this period that Epic and Digital Extremes almost merged, but the idea was scrapped once they realised the Canadian government would require a sizable tax payment up front. And so instead, like college roommates after the last day of class, Digital Extremes and Epic Games went down their own different paths.
That makes sense, I suppose.
After the release of Unreal Tournament 3, Epic would go on to partner with Microsoft Studios to create the Gears of War franchise. And Digital
really that
Extremes
long ago?
had a big idea of their own, a sci-fi action MMO they were calling Dark Sector. They poured their creative energy into this project, hoping it would be the key to a new era for the studio. And in fact, it was. But instead of sending them down the path of creating an entirely new franchise for them to own, the demo kept securing them work-for-hire projects.
So yeah, the old DE that I worked at made some cool Unreal games with Epic, and then we hit the pitch circuit, right? Here's our idea for games. You know, we tried to make this crazy sci-fi game that was called Dark Sector, that wasn't the Dark Sector that shipped. And that was, I remember that was living out of a suitcase for 6 months, traveling Europe and West Coast with a tech demo in a cube PC. You walk in, you show this tech demo, and they say, this is awesome, this is great. How would you like to make the sequel to this game instead? Ugh. Right? So, you know, that wasn't really, I mean, it was very creatively upsetting, and it kind of sold
I can imagine that
putting everything into this, but it got us work. Publishers have their franchises, and they want to build on that. And so
we want you, but not what you do. That's not
what we call work for hire. Work for hire is we're going to pay you a lot to grow an extreme amount to your breaking limit, so that you have all these people to take care of with their families, their mortgages, and their hopes and dreams. We're going to pay you just enough to get to the end of the project. You better pray it earns out so you can get your royalties back.
If I look back on my career, it was probably my biggest personal mistake was to, you know, we had some good money coming in. We weren't that big. We were quite successful, but we had our eye on, like, you know, let's make something like the next Halo, like something huge, right? Because the games were at that point were getting bigger and bigger, and that was exciting to us. And we wanted to be, you know, AAA, huge, biggest games. And so we'd come up with a demo or pitching ideas to publishers looking to use their money to make some product, and it was definitely a challenge that went on with us for many, many years, looking for that product of our own, when possibly the better decision at the time would be to have been taken our own money and made our own small little product that was fully funded ourselves, that wasn't striving to be that big, massive blockbuster.
Then that's your own money, it's more risky.
More risky, but then you have full control over it, because just when you're doing a work-for-hire project, I mean, it's their money, so you're doing what they want, and maybe you never know exactly what they want, or they don't know what they want. And if you look at our history and most independent studios' history, when they have full control, complete control over the product they're making, which often only comes if you're funding it yourself, you will make a better product.
I mean, the risk on something like that would be massive, obviously, but it's just so much better to have that control, isn't it? You know. You know, higher chance of success nowadays than back then. I say, yeah, no, it would have been very successful way to do it nowadays, I think, yeah.
For over a decade, Digital Extremes would work predominantly in the cutthroat world of work for hire.
Very hard.
What many studios do when they're in this situation is scale up for projects and then conduct widespread layoffs afterwards. But James was from the area, and Digital Extremes was the only studio in town. His employees had roots, families, friends, mortgage payments. So him and the team did anything they could to keep contracts coming through the door. What this meant was that their Dark Sector idea kept getting kicked down the road while the team worked to keep the lights on. The studio partnered with Toronto-based Groove Games on Unreal Engine shooter Pariah and its sequel of sorts, Warpath. They took a contract to help create the PlayStation 3 port of BioShock, all the while shipping around their Dark Sector game.
We had this idea, what would Metal Gear and like the Dark Crystal be if you put them together? So of course there would be like anime energy tentacles coming out of people's heads. There would be really cool robots.
What we got, Warframe.
But the metal would be organic and changing. You know, we had a lot of ideas. Science fiction that wasn't necessarily just like James Cameron science fiction. We wanted maybe some Frank Herbert science fiction. So we had these kind of ideas, and I went off and wrote a whole bunch of stuff about these characters, and the artists, you know, Mike Brennan designed these beautiful,
great.
Very
They are
interesting
so good.
enemies, and him and Jeff, you know, worked on the original kind of what became our Excalibur suit, and we went around and pitched it, and this was kind of when Halo was sort of a thing starting.
Speaking
to
of
emerge,
Halo,
but every publisher said no one likes sci-fi and they won't sell.
It's very
Consistent
early.
every time.
But yeah, they were saying this came out around the time as Halo, and like it would be a no-brainer for all these companies to go, let's grab onto that Halo power, you know? But they just didn't.
So the Tenno, which is the good guys, send in our boy. Here he is, Hayden
Always through
Tenno,
the vents.
looking nice in his ancient Excalibur armor suit. All right, so there he is, and this is the perspective of our game. It's sort of an over-the-shoulder mixed third-person, first-person type control scheme. We've got on the left analog stick, we have move and strafe, like you might have in a game like Halo. And on the right stick, we've got look, aim. So we see the
I mean,
suit
it's not
at all
a million
times,
miles
but
away,
we
is
have
it?
essentially what is a
From
first-person control
Warframe
scheme.
came.
Back then, you were really beholden to publishers to get your games out. There wasn't digital distribution. You know, you needed to get your game onto a retail shelf, and to do that was really expensive. And there was no way for kind of independent developers to be able to foot that bill. You know, you have to manufacture a certain amount even to get onto store shelves, and you have to pay all of that up front, along with, you know, the licensing fees that come with that. And being an independent developer up until about, I'd say 5 to 7 years ago, was really difficult.
I mean, you talk
he
to
still
any
is, I
kind
would
of
say.
mid-sized developer, even these days. I think it's and especially back then, it was a huge challenge because the games were becoming bigger and bigger. And the mid-sized games, it was really even more hit or miss if they were to even gain any traction in retail.
As that runway was running out and I was getting desperate, and we were getting chain yanked by publishers. You know, one publisher said, well, we don't like the hero, he's too feminine, can he have an eye patch? Like literally crazy things like that. It was getting so
That's ridiculous.
Close to signing, but just wasn't, and it was dragging
That
on,
was
dragging
looking
on.
for an excuse
So
not to do it.
We did a pivot. We said, oh, it's gonna be, okay, those sci-fi stuff, fine, okay, so it's gonna be more like Resident Evil than it is gonna be like, you know, Dark Crystal in space. So we kind of made these compromises in order to land the deal.
So much of it is similar
The Dark
to
Sector
Warframe.
that was eventually
But like
released
PlayStation
looks
2
almost
Warframe.
nothing like the original pitch video.
Let's
They
go,
took off
but
the
can we make
protagonist's
MC
mask.
Snake? That's
Instead of
exactly what
being
they
a
were doing.
space soldier, he was now part of the CIA. It played less like Metal Gear and more like Resident Evil 4 or Gears of War. But they did keep the name, Hayden Tenno, a term they'd use again in the future. Dark Sector received above average reviews when it was launched in March of 2008, but it came out in a tough market as it was an incredibly popular time for third-person action games.
Can you get Dark
Flailed
Sector
around
on
for a while
Steam?
trying
Because
to
I
find
might
its
pick it up.
footing and find what the actual gameplay was and how we integrated the glaive with the gunplay and the cover system that was in
It might be fun to play the
games,
story.
Like, you know, like Gears was inspiration, but we wanted to do something a little bit better, a little bit more fluid.
I mean, that's the difference between what the publisher at the time wanted with a game. They wanted something that was more grounded and more kind of set in reality that people could relate to.
With these robot samurai people. Should be on Steam. I think they gave it away for free for some years ago as well. I'll definitely have a look, see if I can pick it up. It might be something to play in the future. But it looks interesting enough. Like he says, like Metal Gear kind of thing.
Digital Extreme's Dark Sector project hadn't gone exactly the way they wanted to, but at the very least it had been competitive at market. Plus, the team had another game out the door.
They continued doing work for hire gigs. They developed the multiplayer for Bioshock 2 and Homefront. They designed The Darkness 2 for 2K and secured a contract to make the video game for an upcoming Star Trek movie. But the squeeze on mid-tier games was getting worse and worse for publishers. Rising development costs meant that the revenue required to make each of these games a financial success
I
was
remember that
rising with
game, but
each
never
year.
playing it.
Digital Extremes found themselves caught in the crossfire.
Well, I think a lot of publishers moved all that stuff internally, and you know, that mid-tier developer, you know, I think we saw the writing on the wall is those pitches and those things were harder to do, and the quality bar that the publisher required and the risks they were willing to take they weren't willing to take them anymore. So it was like, okay, well, we're gonna have to figure out something else.
You know, Star Trek's ramping down rather, and soon, you know, there won't be any more milestone payments coming in to keep the lights on. This other project that we had started that we thought was going to get greenlit, that publisher had a bad quarter and are now doing everything in-house. You know, like these are literally things happen.
It was a very challenging time, and it was definitely hard to get to work with a publisher to get those real, potentially high quality products funded, because there was so much at stake. Like, to compete, you need to put more money in them. And then at that time, we're looking at free-to-play, and we heard amazing things about some of the more, World of Tanks is the most perfect example. They did phenomenal. I don't know what the budget was, but it clearly wasn't like a $100 million budget to ship that out the door. And we love the idea of the fact that, you know, you can initially ship something smaller, and we'd seen this in a few other games, and then grow beyond there. So it really seemed really appealing to us, that concept where you could try something out, see if the fans like it, and then grow as needed.
You know, the inspiration was, can we make something small? I mean, back the clock up 2 years, that would have been an XBLA game, right? But XBLA didn't seem to be landing the hits that maybe independent developers like we were hoping it would. And so that seemed like, okay, well, here's another option. My interest was not, you know, free to play, let's bilk the players, right? My interest was, well, the scope of that sounds like something we could do with how much we have left. And it better work, because that's it.
Was it scary, the idea that, like, because you're not swimming
completely.
in capital?
It was a Hail Mary. It was like, it really
Well,
was.
I've heard before that World of
closing
Tanks
guy, right?
did inspire it.
Yeah, really close, really close. I
At
can
least
tell
the
that
model,
story. It was pretty,
the business model.
it was super close. We knew that this was our last chance, and we had a couple $1 million extra, like, to do this with. We studied all the games out there, a game called Drakensang, which I really enjoyed at the time, and World of Tanks, and was it Battlefield Heroes, I think had done all right. So we're looking at anything out there that looked like it was sustaining itself. I told Steve and the guys, you know, you got 12 months. That's it. There's like nothing but 12 months.
We had tried to make a version of Dark Sector multiple times. We had made this kind of weird MMO prototype using Unreal, and we had kind of servers and you could jump between them, and it was kind of starting to feel almost like, you know, it was very precursor. The original Planet Side was coming out, and we're like, oh man, and World War II Online, like people were starting to make these kind of action games, but with an MMO context. We were really attracted to that.
Steve had always thought of a Dark Sector sequel where we go back to the Space Ninja demo that we had done, and he's thinking like a small space pirate raid. So we'd kind of do randomly generated ships. You'd raid these ships, get loot, and come back. With that original idea of his, you know, he kind of thought of it as a small, maybe like PSN or Xbox Live game type of thing that we just never really had the opportunity to make. So when we were thinking about going into the free-to-play, this seemed like a really good, small, tangible demo that we could make, and it was, for us, it was like this thing we really loved that we really never got to execute on.
A few of us went to James and said, okay, we think we can do this really fast if it's this and it's small scope, and we think that co-op is not as served as it gives us an opportunity not to be kind of going against the giants.
The team had a round of layoffs, but they were still 250 people large. Steve was put in charge of a small group, around a dozen people, who put together the demo for this new free-to-play game, taking ideas as early as the original 2000s Dark Sector MMO and much of the gameplay and visuals from their failed 2005 pitch of Dark Sector. They put together a demo of their spaceship raiding game in just under 2 months. Then Stephen Meredith went back on the road to try and pitch this game to free-to-play publishers looking for any sort of cash injection to help them keep the lights on.
And we had the largest free-to-play publishers in the world, the richest. You know, I don't need to name them, but you can just like Google, who's the richest? Here they come. And they walked in and they said, this is great. I can't believe this. What an exciting meeting. I'm so good. And in slow motion and the record needle scratch because it was sci-fi.
Right.
And they just walked in.
As soon as they saw that it was PvE and sci-fi, it was...
Why? Sci-fi's cool.
What?
I mean, at that same time, I remember one of those guys that came to the studio, they did the tour, they looked at what we'd been building, and his reaction was interesting. It was, this is the best looking free-to-play game I've ever seen. You will fail. Dave and I just looked at each other. Oh, kill me now. So why are we gonna fail? Well, because the game can't look this good and update as often as you need to build your community. And of course that was like branded on my ass, like frequent, fast updates. How are we gonna do this? So a lot of early tech in Warframe, like
I mean, there are definitely people like that, that if you give them a thing that says, well, you can't do this, they get that whole bee under the bonnet. Oh, I will fucking show you. I will show you that I will do it. It's not yet another WoW clone. We are not interested. Exactly. I know. It's so bad. These are so good. I don't know why anyone wouldn't.
Procedural levels.
I mean, it took me a long time to start playing Warframe. I mean, I'm 11 years late? More? But still, it's popular. People like it.
And that sort of stuff. Completely geared to that kind of idea of frequent updating. Those publishers didn't bite. And so it was, can we make money before the end of the year? And that was like, okay, so 9 months to make a game.
When the team tried to make the original Dark Sector, the need to get a publisher influenced that game dramatically. But this time, Digital Extremes didn't have time to retool the game for publisher needs. And frankly, they didn't want to. They knew what type of project they were making. A free-to-play Space Ninja game they were currently calling Lotus. But what they didn't know was whether or not this game would be enough to help save the company.
This project was a massive
2016
shot in the
just
dark.
because we wanted to play
Not
Destiny
only
on
had the
PC.
team never made a free-to-play game before,
Warframe was close to
this
it. Yeah,
game
I can see
was going
that.
to be responsible for keeping a studio of 250 people afloat while they scrambled to look for more work-for-hire gigs. What actually transpired wouldn't only shock and surprise DE, but the entire video games world. In the next part in this series, we take a look at the remarkable story of Warframe. See you then.
Pretty much why I tried it while waiting for Destiny on Xbox back in the day. I love it. So yes, this is, there we go, noclip documentary.
All right, so I'll get in a position here and
awesome.
left trigger.
We love them.
And this is a contextual area where I can.
Like I say, they did Final Fantasy 14, and the Final Fantasy
up,
14 one
drop
was
down
incredible.
From,
really
to
well
get the jump
put
on
together.
enemies, to get into a better strategic
Definitely
position,
have to watch that one.
To hide. And these are contextual areas in the level. Okay, hit left trigger up, and I hop up. Better get in here and right trigger. Yeah, take that.
Oh, he didn't like
nice
that.
shadow kill there, and that's.
Wait, don't lose because I wanted to
sneak
play
attack
Monster
with the
Hunter
right
on
trigger,
PC. Pretty
and
much.
allows us to kill
and
guards
sadly
that are
that game
unaware
turned
of
to shit.
us. And of course, if he was aware of me,
It does happen.
would have been a much different situation. So I'm going to show you focus now, and that's talked about left trigger and right trigger. Each stance also has a focus, and that's by pressing both triggers at one time. It allows us to do something per stance, and in this case, allows us to have this sort of X-ray vision. This is the stealth ping, so to speak, sort of a Daredevil-esque view of the world. And we can see those glowing red
They
dots.
did
Those
it
are
before
enemies
Arkham Asylum.
based on how long I focused for.
Batman Vision.
And they've sent up a sentient machine to look for me because their buddy hasn't checked in. So they're a little suspicious here. Very nice. So the thing that makes Hayden special, of course, is that he has a gift with these sentient machines in that he can sort of mind meld or link with them, as we call it. And that's one of the stances that we use in the game.
It's really interesting. It's very interesting. Done. Okay, we'll jump to the next one.